You spent 3 weeks finding the right person. You screened resumes, conducted interviews, negotiated an offer, and finally received the signed letter. You told your team, "We found someone great." Then day one arrived, and you handed that great person a laptop, pointed them toward the break room, and left them to figure it out. 6 months later, they're gone, and you're back at square one wondering what went wrong. Nothing went wrong with the person. Everything went wrong after they walked through the door. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how to fix it. Welcome to Toby Talks. I'm Toby Hoy, and this show is about the real work of leadership, process improvement, and professional development. No fluff, no corporate buzzwords, but the real stuff that moves the needle when you apply it. Today, we're talking about employee onboarding. I'm not talking about welcome packets and orientation checklists. The system behind contributors who stay, who grow, and who perform at a high level from month 3 onward. Because onboarding isn't a one-day event. It's a 90-day relationship building process. And most organizations are getting it wrong in ways that cost them real money and real talent. Let me start with a scene that I will bet you've lived through. Think about the last time your organization brought on a new hire. What did their first day look like? I'll bet you a taco. It went something like this. They showed up in the morning, maybe a little early, dressed a notch above the dress code because they didn't know the office norms yet. Someone from HR walked them through tax forms and the benefits paperwork. Somebody else came along and gave them a tour of the office. They met a bunch of people whose names that they immediately forgot. And then a third person came and took them to lunch. By 3 p.m. on day one, they were sitting at their desk, staring at a screen with no idea what to do next. The lie most companies tell themselves is this: we have an onboarding program. And they say it with confidence because they have a checklist. There's a benefits review. There's an IT setup process. There's a welcome email template. All of that covers orientation. Orientation and onboarding are not the same thing. Orientation is logistics. Here's your badge. Here's where the restrooms are. Here's a summary of your health insurance options. Onboarding is something fundamentally different. Onboarding is the sustained, deliberate process of transforming a new hire from an outsider into a contributing member of the team. It spans weeks, not hours. It involves the manager, not the HR department. And it addresses the questions that determine whether someone stays or leaves. Those questions are simple, and every new hire is asking them, whether they say it out loud or not. Things like, do I belong here? Does my manager care whether I succeed or not? Do I understand what's expected of me? Is the organization set up for me to win, or am I on my own? If answers to those questions come from a designed experience, you as the manager control the narrative. If the answers come from whatever random experience the new hire stumbles into, you've rolled the dice. Here's what the dice cost you. Organizations with a strong onboarding process improve new hire retention by 82%. And productivity by over 70%. SHRMA, the Society for Human Resource Management, estimates that replacing an employee costs the organization between 6 to 9 months of that employee's salary. For a role paying $80,000 a year, that's between $40,000 and $60,000 in recruiting, training, and lost productivity every time someone walks out the door in their first year. Multiply that by your annual turnover and the math gets painful fast. And all of that is before you count the damage to morale. The people who stay watched a colleague wash out. They formed opinions. Engagement takes a hit that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet, but does show up as lost discretionary effort and in how your team talks about the company when they're not at work. I talked to a VP of operations last year who said something that kind of stuck with me. She said, "We budget for turnover like it's inevitable. We have a line item for recruitment, but we never budget for onboarding. We'll spend $15,000 finding someone and then spend $0 making sure that they succeed. When she said it out loud, she heard how absurd the whole thing sounded. Most organizations invest heavily in acquiring talent and almost nothing in activating that talent. They'll spend weeks finding the right person and then wing it once that person arrives in the door. The gap between acquisition and activation is where new hires fall through the floor. Let me tell you about the time that I almost ruined a perfectly good employee at Toby's Taco Truck. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you already know about Toby's Taco Truck, the finest tacos on wheels. One operator, one truck, and one shot to get it right every single shift. A while back, business was booming. Lines were around the block during the lunch rush. Catering requests were coming in. Social media was buzzing, and I needed help. I brought on a new crew member named Marcus. Marcus had a great attitude. He was a quick learner, and he showed up 10 minutes early on his first day, ready to work. And what did I do on his first day? I threw him straight into the lunch rush. And here's how I justified it to myself. The best way to learn is by doing. Sink or swim, trial by fire. He looked capable. He said he worked in food service before. I showed him where the tortillas were, showed him the order system on the tablet, and said, watch me for the first 2 orders, and then you're up. 2 miserable orders. That's what I gave him before putting him in front of paying customers during the day's busiest hour. Marcus lasted about 40 minutes before the wheels came off. He mixed up a carnitas order with an al pastor order. He forgot to ask about salsa preferences and had a customer send a taco back. He couldn't find the extra napkins because I never told him where I stashed them, and dropped an entire container of pico de gallo on the floor. The line outside the truck was getting longer. Customers were getting impatient, and I was barking corrections instead of coaching. By the time the lunch rush ended, Marcus was standing in the corner of the truck, looking like he wanted to crawl under the prep counter and disappear. In that scenario, Marcus wasn't the problem. Marcus was the same person I hired, capable, eager, and ready to contribute. I was the problem. I threw him into the deep end without giving him the context, the training, the muscle memory, or the structural support that he needed to succeed. I treated orientation, here's the tortilla station, like it was onboarding. Here's how we execute during a rush. Here's your specific role. Here's how we recover when things go sideways. And here's what I need you to own in your head by the end of week 1. After the rush, I sat down with Marcus outside of a truck and apologized. Straight up. I told him that I had set him up to fail, and that was on me. Then I told him what I should have told him before his first shift. How the rush rhythm works, which stations to focus on first, what to do when an order gets complicated, the exact sequence for building each taco variant, and where every supply is stored. I mapped out his first 2 weeks. Day 1 is observation, prep work, and learning the menu cold. Day 2 is simple orders, with me checking every plate before it goes out the window. Day 3 is running a station with real orders while I float support. By the end of week 1, he'd handle a partial rush with confidence. By the end of week 2, he'd run the truck with me doing quality checks only. Marcus turned into my best crew member. He got faster than me on certain builds. Customers asked for him by name. He even started making menu suggestions and improvements based on what he was seeing on the orders. Not because he was inherently better than anyone else that I had tried, but because I gave him an on-ramp instead of a cliff, a system instead of a speech. To put it simply, your people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because you skip the system that connects their talent to your operation. So how do we fix this? There are 5 building blocks, and I've seen these work in organizations from 5 people to 5,000. The scale changes, the principles don't. And if you have all 5, your onboarding works. If you're missing even one, you have a gap that is costing you people. Building block number 1 is pre-boarding. This is everything that happens between the accepted offer and day 1. In most companies, that window is a black hole. The new hire accepts the offer and then hears nothing for 2 to 4 weeks. Maybe they'll receive an automated email from the HR system asking them to complete a W-4 and the other tax paperwork. Meanwhile, the new hire is in a high anxiety period. They've already resigned from their old job. They're leaving familiar colleagues and routines behind. And the silence from your side amplifies every doubt that they have. A good pre-boarding process closes that gap. Send them a welcome message from the direct manager, not an automated template. A personal note that says, hey, I'm excited to have you on my team. And here's what your first week is going to look like. Include in that a simple first week agenda. Ship their laptop and equipment early so that they're not waiting around on day 1 while IT configures a machine. Give them a short document about the team, who's who, what the current priorities are, and what the first week will focus on. Tell them what to wear, where to park, and what time to show up. These things may seem small, but for someone walking into a brand new environment, they're not. Also, introduce the new hire to the team before they start. Send a message to the team with the new person's name, role, start date, and a couple details about their background. That way, when the new hire walks in on day 1 and 3 people greet them by name, the belonging question starts to be answered before they ever sit down. Pre-boarding takes a manager about 45 minutes to set up for each new hire. But those 45 minutes transform the emotional state of the person that you're about to invest thousands of dollars and weeks of time in. It's the highest ROI that the manager will spend in the entire onboarding process. Building block number 2 is a structured first week. The first week sets the standard. If it's disorganized and improvised, the new hire will start to form an opinion about the entire company based on that chaos alone. If it's thoughtful and well-paced, that'll help confirm that they made the right decision. A strong first week includes 4 things. The first is a sit down with the direct manager on day 1 to align on role expectations and establish the communication rhythm for their first 90 days. Second are scheduled introductions with key colleagues, not a hallway parade where you point at people and say names. I'm talking about real 20-minute conversations where the new hire learns what each person does and how they'll work together. Third, a complete walkthrough of all the tools, systems, and processes that they'll touch on a daily basis. Don't make them have to figure out the expense system, the project tracker, or the communication channels by trial and error. Walk them through the basics on each one. And fourth is some breathing room. Don't pack every minute of the day. Leave some space to absorb, to process, and to settle in. The brain needs recovery time to convert raw information into usable knowledge. Resist the urge to schedule back-to-back meetings for all 5 days. I see managers do this with good intentions, and the result is the opposite. The new hire ends up absolutely exhausted and overwhelmed and hasn't done a single piece of actual work by Wednesday. Build in at least 2 hours of unstructured time each day. Give that new hire a first week assignment as well, not as a test, but a low-stakes project that lets them contribute something tangible by Friday. Have them review a process document and flag questions. Shadow a team member and write 3 observations, or draft a short summary of what they've learned. The purpose here isn't the output, it's the sense of contribution. A new hire who produces something, even something small, feels like a participant instead of an observer. Close out the first week with a 15-minute check-in. 3 questions. What went well? What confused you? And what do you need from me next week? That conversation takes almost no time and gives you an early warning system for problems that would otherwise stay invisible until they're too big to fix. Building block number 3 is role clarity and milestones. This is the building block that most organizations skip, and it's the one that causes the most damage. A new hire knows their title and maybe a general sense of their job responsibilities. But what they don't know is what success looks like at 30, 60, and 90 days. Without clear milestones, they're guessing. And guessing creates anxiety, and anxiety kills performance. Write down specific, measurable expectations for each 30-day window. At 30 days, the new hire should handle X independently. At 60 days, they should own Y end to end. And at 90 days, they should contribute to Z at a level that matches their peers. 1 page, clear targets, and all reviewed on day 1. And then revisited at each milestone. Don't assume that the job description does this job. The job description is a recruiting tool. Milestones are a performance tool. Different purpose, different document, and a different conversation. Let me give you a concrete example of milestones. For the sake of argument, we'll assume that we're onboarding a marketing coordinator. At 30 days, they should independently manage the social media calendar with no edits needed. They will have completed the brand voice training module and have published 5 posts reviewed by the team lead. At 60 days, they own the monthly newsletter end to end. They've built working relationships with the design and content teams, and they draft campaign briefs that need minimal revision. Finally, at 90 days, they should be able to propose a content initiative based on performance data, run the weekly marketing stand-up without supervision, and contribute to campaign strategy meetings at a peer level. Those milestones give both the new hire and the manager a shared definition of on track. Without them, you're both guessing, and guessing doesn't scale. Building block number 4 is connection architecture. People don't leave companies, they leave isolation. A new hire who doesn't feel connected to their team will start to drift within weeks, long before you notice it in their output. The most effective tool that I've seen for building connections is the buddy system. I'm not talking about a mentor, not talking about a supervisor, but a peer whose specific role is to be the safe person for questions that feel too basic for a manager. Things like, where's the good coffee? Which meetings are actually required and which ones are legit optional? What's the team's communication style on Slack versus email? The buddy removes the fear of looking incompetent, which is one of the biggest barriers to integration in the first month. I worked with a manufacturing company a while back that implemented a buddy system on its production floor. New operators were paired with an experienced line worker for their first 30 days. The buddy walked them through every station, explained the safety protocols in plain language, and sat with them during breaks. Before the buddy system, their 90-day turnover for new operators was roughly 35%. After implementing the buddy system and working out the kinks, it dropped to 11%. The program cost the company nothing, except for a few hours of reduced output from the buddies, which was more than offset with lower recruitment costs in the first quarter alone. Beyond the buddy, build in structured social touchpoints, a weekly coffee with a different team member for the first month, a group lunch at the end of the 2-week mark, and a casual hello from a skip-level leader around day 45. Managers will often dismiss this as soft, and they couldn't be more wrong. Humans are social animals, and connection is what makes everything else in onboarding effective. A new hire who feels isolated won't tell you that they're struggling during a check-in. They'll say everything's fine because they don't trust the relationship enough yet to be honest. A new hire who feels connected will flag a problem early because they believe that their manager wants to help and not judge. Connection isn't soft. It's the infrastructure that makes everything else work. And finally, building block number 5, the 90-day rhythm. This is where the follow-through lives. And follow-through is where most onboarding programs die. The first week is planned. Weeks 2 through 12 are a void. That void is where engagement dies. Questions go unasked and doubts take root. Build a check-in cadence weekly, one-on-ones for the first month, bi-weekly for the second month, and a formal 90-day review to close out the onboarding period. The weekly check-ins don't need to be lengthy. 15 minutes, 3 questions. What's going well? Where are you stuck? And what support do you need from me? Consistency matters more than duration. Showing up every week tells the new hire that they matter. Canceling tells them they don't. During the check-in, take notes. Write down what the new hire says. When they mentioned in week 2 that they were confused by the project tracking system, and then you followed up in week 3 with a walkthrough, that continuity builds trust faster than any swag bag. The 90-day review is different from the check-ins. It's a partnership conversation, not a status update. You share with them what you've observed, the strengths, the growth areas, and trajectory. The new hire shares their experiences as well. What worked, what was missing, and what they wish had been different. Together, you set the agenda for the next phase of their development. This conversation is the bridge between onboarding and ongoing growth. Skip it and the new hire transitions from new person to everyone else without ever knowing where they stand. One other question that I always recommend for the 90-day review is what almost made you quit? Most new hires will be honest if you've built enough trust over the preceding 3 months. And the answers may surprise you. It might be a confusing process that nobody thought to explain in more detail, a team dynamic that felt exclusionary, or a tool that drove them absolutely bonkers every single day. Whatever it is, it's information that you need to improve the experience for the next person. Also, asking that question itself sends a message that we want to know what we got wrong so that we can fix it. And unfortunately, that's a rare stance in most organizations. I do need to stop down and say something that's going to ruffle some feathers. HR does not own onboarding. HR owns orientation. HR owns compliance paperwork, benefits enrollment, policy acknowledgments, and the logistics of getting a human being into your payroll system. All of those things are necessary, and they are not what determines whether your new hire succeeds or fails. The manager is the onboarding program. The manager sets expectations on day 1. The manager builds the relationship over 90 days. The manager creates an environment where the new hire either thrives or drifts. If you are a manager and you're delegating onboarding entirely to HR or to a training department, you are outsourcing the most important relationship your new hire will form in their first quarter. I've watched this play out dozens of times. A company builds a beautiful onboarding playbook with slide decks, welcome kits, team building activities, branded swag bags, the works. And then the manager doesn't show up. I don't mean that by being physically absent, but by being mentally checked out. They skip the first week check-in because they're swamped. They postpone the 90-day milestone review due to a client escalation. They assume that the new hire is fine because nobody raised a flag. And nobody raised a flag because new hires don't raise flags. They leave. Raising a flag requires trust, and trust takes time. And time is exactly what you don't have when someone is still evaluating whether they made the right decision or not. If you wait for a new hire to tell you that something is wrong, you've already lost them. The warning signs are silence, disengagement, and reduced initiative. By the time a new hire complains, they've already mentally checked out. Gallup's research on this is staggering, and it shows that the manager accounts for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores. Percent. Your onboarding program is only as good as the manager running it. A mediocre framework with an engaged, present manager will outperform a polished, expensive program with an absent one every single time. If you are a leader of leaders, this is where your highest leverage lives. Don't invest in better orientation slide decks. Invest in better manager habits. Coach your managers on how to run a first week check-in. Show them how to write a 30, 60, 90-day milestone document. Hold them accountable for the buddy assignment and the 90-day review. The program you build is only as good as the people who execute it. And the person who executes onboarding is the direct manager. Full stop. Commit to 3 non-negotiable actions for every new hire. Number 1, a personal welcome message before day 1. Number 2, a 30, 60, and 90-day milestone document reviewed on day 1. And number 3, weekly 15-minute check-ins for the first month. Those 3 actions take less than 2 hours total across the first 30 days. 2 hours. That's the minimum viable onboarding program. And it's radically better than what most managers do today, which is nothing after the first handshake. Before we bring this home, I want to cover the 3 most common onboarding mistakes that I see. And these aren't the obvious ones, like we don't have a plan. These are the subtle things that undermine even the most well-designed programs. Mistake number 1 is information overload. The instinct when onboarding a new hire is to teach them everything all at once. Here are all of our policies. Here are all of our systems. Here are all of our processes. Here's a 200-page employee handbook. Read all of it by Friday. The intention is efficiency, but the result is chaos. Cognitive load theory tells us that the brain has a limited capacity for new information in any given period. When you exceed that capacity, retention crashes toward 0. I've seen companies run 2-day orientation programs packed with presentations, demos, system walkthroughs, and policy reviews. By the end of day 2, the new hire remembers their login credentials and the name of one person from their team. Everything else is a blur. Front load the essentials: access to tools, immediate responsibilities, and communication norms. Schedule everything else across weeks 2 through 6. Drip the knowledge, don't dump it. Mistake number 2 is assuming experienced hires don't need onboarding. This one bites organizations constantly, and it tends to bite them at the most expensive level. A company hires a new VP of whatever with 25 or 30 years of experience and assumes that they'll figure it out because they're senior. But here's what that new VP doesn't know. They don't know your culture, your decision-making norms, your internal politics, your communications cadence, your technology stack, your team dynamics, and the unwritten rules that determine how things get done in your specific organization. They know their function. They don't know your ecosystem. The higher the role, the more dangerous it is to skip onboarding. An individual contributor learning on the fly makes small mistakes that are relatively easy to correct. A VP learning on the fly makes strategic decisions based on incomplete context, and those decisions carry real organizational weight. I've seen this play out with a newly hired operations director who spent her first 3 months making decisions that contradicted the organization's established relationships and norms. She reorganized a reporting structure that the CEO had specifically designed 2 years earlier. She changed a vendor relationship that was tied to a board member's connection. She implemented a communication protocol that clashed with the team's established rhythm. None of those decisions were bad in isolation. They were bad in context, and she didn't have the context because nobody onboarded her to the organization's political and cultural reality. The cleanup in that case took 6 months and cost her her credibility, which she never fully recovered. And all of it was preventable. Mistake number 3 is one-size-fits-all programming. A new college graduate and a mid-career lateral hire have different needs. An individual contributor and a people manager need different things in their first 90 days. A remote employee faces integration challenges that an in-office employee doesn't. Your onboarding framework needs to accommodate all of these differences. The 5 building blocks stay the same. The content within each building block adapts to the person, the role, the experience level, and the work arrangement. To put it all in a nutshell, good onboarding doesn't treat people like a category. It meets them where they are and builds from there. At this point, you've built the framework and you're running the check-ins. Your managers are engaged. How do you know if the entire thing is working? There are 3 metrics that will tell you everything that you need to know. Metric number 1 is time to productivity. How long does it take a new hire to reach the performance level of their peers? If your average is 6 months and you reduce it to 3, your onboarding improvements are doing their job. A combination of manager assessments and milestone completion rates will provide you a solid proxy to determine this. Metric number 2 is early stage retention. Track your 90-day, 6-month, and 1-year retention rates for new hires specifically. If people are leaving within the first 6 months, then your onboarding has a gap. Look for patterns in the data. Is it isolated to specific teams, specific roles, or specific managers? The retention data will tell you where the system is breaking. And finally, metric number 3 is new hire satisfaction. Run a brief survey at 30, 60, and 90 days. 3 questions. Do you understand your role expectations? Do you feel supported by your manager? And would you recommend this organization to a friend? Those 3 questions will give you a good pulse on the new hire experience in real time before dissatisfaction turns into a resignation. Don't overcomplicate measurement. 3 metrics, track consistently, and iterated on quarterly. Share those results with the managers in question. When a manager sees that their new hires are hitting 30-day milestones 2 weeks early, or that their satisfaction scores are 15 points above the company average, they'll see the payoff in real numbers. When another manager sees that their new hires are rating support as low, they get the feedback without anyone having to deliver bad news. The data does the coaching almost by itself. Let me bring all of this together to wrap it up. Onboarding is not orientation. Orientation handles logistics, badge, benefits, and the building tour. Onboarding is the deliberate, sustained process of building a contributor who belongs, performs, and stays. It spans at least 90 days, and it requires manager ownership, not HR delegation. And it rests on 5 building blocks: pre-boarding communication, a structured first week, role clarity through 30, 60, and 90-day milestones, connection architecture, including a buddy assignment, and a consistent 90-day check-in rhythm. There are 3 mistakes to avoid: information overload, skipping onboarding for experienced hires, and a one-size-fits-all program. 3 metrics to track it all: measuring time to productivity, early stage retention, and new hire satisfaction. Your new hire made a choice. They chose your organization over every other option that was available to them. The first 90 days are your chance to prove that their choice was the right one. Every check-in that you keep, every milestone conversation that you hold, every buddy that you assign, and every pre-boarding message that you send is a deposit into a relationship that will return value for years. Or it's a deposit that you skipped, and the interest compounds against you. If this episode gave you something that you'll use, share it with a fellow leader who's bringing someone new onto their team this month. Head on over to toby-talks.com for the full blog post on this topic, plus frameworks that you won't find anywhere else. Subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, and leave a review if the show is helping you lead better. As always, I'm Toby Hoy, and this has been Toby Talks. Until next time, go lead, go improve, and go grow.